Hey class, Mr. Long here. So today we're going to first start our first DBQ for our class, and DBQ stands for document-based question. So basically what we're going to do is we are going to look at three separate documents from three different Enlightenment thinkers, one being John Locke, one being Voltaire, and one being Mary Wollstonecraft. And we are going to analyze each document. We are going to figure out the main idea from each document, and then we're going to take information from the documents and we are going to write a 5 paragraph essay. So first things first is every DBQ that we have for this class, we have a main question that we need to answer. And our DBQ always goes back to this main question. So this question for the DBQ that we're looking at today is the Enlightenment philosophers. What was their main idea? Well, hopefully we all understand from the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about the Enlightenment, these philosophers new ideas and their opinions, and it's all about freedoms and rights for the people, taking powers away from the monarchs, the kings, the queens, the government officials, and giving people more freedoms and rights and powers. So we are going to focus on this question, and we're always going to go back to this question. So we are going to analyze three documents. Now I know on the screen and in front of you, you have four documents, A, B, C, and D, but we're going to leave out document C on Adam Smith, the Wealth of Nations. We'll talk about him in the next unit on the Industrial Revolution. So we're only going to focus on document A, which is on John Locke, document B on Voltaire, and document C on Mary Wollstonecraft. Now, a couple things. We should already know that John Locke is all about the natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and that everyone is born with natural rights. And we should also know that John Locke feels that people should have the freedom to choose their own government. Now, Voltaire, we should also know, is all about the freedom of speech and also the freedom of religion. He was tolerant towards all religions, and he felt that people, everyone, should be tolerant and put up with all types of religions, regardless of what people believe in. And finally, Mary Wollstonecraft, and we mentioned her before, and she was all about equality for women and gender equality. So we are going to first look at our background essay, and this is going to set us up before we actually look at our documents and analyze our three documents. Now, all this stuff that we're going to go over, we have talked about before, so this should all be review, should be nothing new. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go through this background essay, and I'm going to tell you certain things to highlight, and I will also tell you what to write in the margins. So it will help us out when we are analyzing and looking at this information. So it makes it a lot easier when we get to our essay and we start writing our essay. So please follow along as I read. If I tell you to highlight something, highlight it. If I tell you to write something in the margins, I need you to stop and highlight, or excuse me, and annotate in the margins, write in the margins. So here we go. It says, in the late 17th and 18th century was a period of many changes. Now, when I say 17th century, I'm referring to the 1600s. 18th century, I'm referring to the 1700s. Between discoveries in science and disagreements over religion, people were questioning traditional ways of living and knowing. So I need you guys to please highlight 17th, 18th century. Also highlight period of many changes. And then please highlight disagreements over religion. And then people were questioning traditional ways of living and knowing. So somewhere near those highlights, I want you to write this in the margins. People started thinking in different ways. Once again, please write down, people started thinking in different ways. You don't have to write this, guys, but hopefully remember people started to think on their own. They relied less on the church and people telling them what the truth is, and they figured out the truth on their own. Okay, moving on with the reading. Thinkers called philosophes or philosophers in French were particularly hopeful they might discover new ways to understand and improve their society. Okay, so highlight key terms, philosophes, which are philosophers, highlight that. And then please highlight discover new ways to understand and improve their society. Moving on. One belief that the philosophes shared is that nature is an excellent teacher. They believed that there were natural laws or truths that people do not always recognize. Please highlight nature is an excellent teacher. And then in the margin to the left, I want you to write down people can learn from their surroundings. Once again, please write down in the margins, people can learn from their surroundings. They believed that if people observed their surroundings, they could discover patterns in nature that could be applied to human activities like government and economics. Please highlight, observe their surroundings. They could discover patterns in nature. Also highlight human activities, and then highlight government and economics. Moving on with the reading. Another belief the philosophers shared was their confidence in people's ability to use reason to discover truth. Please highlight confidence in people's ability to use reason to discover truth. Now, in the margin, guys, I want you to write down people were figuring out the truth on their own. Once again, in the margins, please write down people figuring out the truth on their own. Another belief the philosophers shared was their confidence in people's willing to use reason to discover truths. In fact, the Enlightenment period in history is often called the Age of Reason. Please highlight the Age of Reason. We should know that's just another name for the Enlightenment. Intellectuals believe that if they used the reasoning powers God or nature had given them, they could answer any question. Please highlight reasoning powers God or nature had given them. Highlight could answer any question, and then highlight combination, careful observation, reasoning, and then highlight understanding the truth of all things. So in the margins, this is what I want you guys to write down, please. It's kind of a lot, but I'll repeat it. Individuals depended on themselves to solve problems and understand something. Once again, individuals depended on themselves to solve problems and understand something. One reason the philosophers believed in the existence of natural laws was the work of the famous scientist Isaac Newton. Please highlight Isaac Newton. We've talked about him before. We mentioned the law of gravity. He was a scientist and he was able to prove things through mathematics and science. By making new observations and studying the observations of other physicists before him, Newton noticed patterns in the physical universe. Please highlight Newton noticed patterns in the physical universe. Newton proved that the force that pulls objects to Earth is the same as the force that holds the planets in orbit around the unmoving sun. Newton called this force gravity and described how it worked in several strokes of genius we called Newton's laws. Please highlight gravity and then also highlight at the very end Newton's laws. So please, in the margin at the top, right hand side, write down people are able to physically prove something through science and math. Once again, people are able to physically prove something through science and math. Moving on with the reading, the philosophers believed that what Newton learned about planets, they could learn about people. In other words, if there were rules that explains how objects in the sky behave, There must be natural rules or laws that explain how people behave. So, right hand side in the margin, please write this down. Same laws apply to people as they do in science. Once again, same laws apply to people as they do in science. Right underneath that, I also want you guys to please write this down in the margins. There are reasons why people act the way they do. There are reasons why people act the way they do. So the way a person behaves, there's a reason for that. That's all that means. They believe that these laws were universal. That is, they could be found everywhere. Please highlight universal, they could be found everywhere, and simply had to be discovered. Many a philosopher hoped that he or she could become the Isaac Newton of the social science. This mini Q presents the ideas of four philosophers, writing about four different areas of human society: government, religion, the economy, and the social role of women. Okay, guys, do me a favor. Please highlight government, highlight religion, cross out the economy, and then highlight social role of women. Your first job is to understand why or what they are saying. Please highlight, understand what they are saying. Their language is not always easy, but the passages are short. Then, as you move from document to document, ask yourself if there is one important idea that keeps reappearing, an idea that is basic to all four thinkers. Please highlight. There is one important idea that keeps reappearing. Also highlight, please, idea that is basic to all four thinkers. In other words, answer the question before us. The Enlightenment philosophers, what was their main idea? So our goal, you guys, of this DBQ is to find a similarity between all three philosophers by analyzing documents from each one. And we will understand that there is one similarity. And of course, that is individual freedoms and rights. So we are going to go ahead and we are going to stop there. And we are going to, excuse me, we are going to move on to our first document. But we're going to stop there with our